You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Wednesday the 25th of September 2013. White widow of the British media. Vote Labour for no gas or oil in 2015. Student refuses to remove cap in Bromley College unless Muslim women remove their headdresses. 5 of the 13 UKIP MEPs elected in 2009 have quit or been expelled since then. Greek police raid Golden Dawn offices. Greek police face jobs cuts in latest government austerity measures. The Reverend West and a creature from the deep. China to rent 5% of Ukraine. AIDS and pregnant Tunisian girl recounts her sex jihad in Syria. Zimbabwe elephants poisoned by cyanide. Pakistan earthquake creates new island in Arabian Sea. Thought for the day, will it be our moles next? And finally, a lucky fall from grace for a little piglet. UK news. White widow of British media. One recurring theme from the despicable attack on Nairobi's Westgate Mall was whether Samantha Lewthwaite was involved. This reporter couldn't give a fig. What is irritating is constant referrals in the British media to the White Widow. It's a bit racist, isn't it, especially when we're not allowed to say the White Widow is the white she-dog married to a black Muslim bastard. According to all the news reports emerging, it's still not known whether Samantha Lewthwaite was present and accounted for. Al-Shabaab told Channel 4 News no women were involved, and the Daily Mail reports that Kenyan officials and survivors of the attack state a female was involved. What we do know is that Kenya has begun 3 days of national mourning for the 72 known victims of this vicious attack by Islamist radicals in Kenya. Anything for a headline, and Radio Britain Online and The World at 8 are no different. It would have been a nice ray of sunshine if the White Widow and none of the Al-Shabaab terrorists survived this latest atrocity. Whatever her reasons, she is a traitor to her sex and country and a coward who hides behind a veil whilst killing children. A fairly typical Islamic terrorist then. Vote Labour for no gas or oil in 2015. Ed Miliband's pledge to freeze energy prices in 2015 should Labour win the poll is one of the most nonsensical ideas to come from any recent political party. The UK is energy dependent on OPEC and Russia. The North Sea reserves have dwindled to nothing. A freeze on energy prices would mean no oil or gas brought onto the world's open market. No imported oil or gas means queues at the petrol station, power plants unable to meet demands for electricity, and homes without electricity or gas for heating during winter. It doesn't take 1,000 words in newsprint to hide this basic message. Vote Labour for this pledge and you will spend years in the cold. Student refuses to remove cap in Bromley College unless Muslim women remove their headdresses. A student asked not to wear her cap in Bromley College says she won't agree unless Muslim women remove their headdresses as well. Caroline Powell of Sevenoaks Way, Orpington, is attending Greenwich University, which uses facilities in Bromley College, Rookery Lane. Whilst inside the Bromley College buildings, the 39-year-old has been told repeatedly to remove her cap, but believes that, while Muslim women are allowed to wear headdresses, this represents double standards. The 39-year-old told News Shopper, "It started in September last year when I got stopped at the door by a woman and she said you need to take your cap off. It's a small black leather cap but it's part of my identity. She said you need to take it off, they are the rules." A Muslim woman walked in behind me and I asked if she was going to ask her to take off her headdress. Bromley College explained to Miss Powell her cap should be removed for security reasons. They said it was so they could ID all users of the college so nothing can obscure their face. But all these Muslim women are walking in with scarves across their faces. Miss Powell has continued to make a stand, and over the last few months tensions between her and the staff have increased to the point she fears she will be thrown off the course. She said, "If one rule is made for all of them, fine, but I'm not going to be treated like this when everyone else is allowed to do what they want. I feel it is totally double standards." World at 8 states, "It is double standards and 8 news grand. This story was originally found in the South London newspaper The News Shopper on the 23rd of September. Although it has spawned numerous postings elsewhere the last 2 days, it is no longer found on its original news posting. We mustn't publicise someone standing their ground and well within the law doing so, must we? 5 of the 13 UKIP MEPs elected in 2009 have quit or been expelled since then. Godfrey Bloom, the UKIP MEP for Yorkshire, England, resigned from the party yesterday after hitting a journalist over the head and calling a room full of female party activists sluts during the UKIP party conference last week. Bloom had already had the party whip withdrawn by party leader Nigel Farage, who announced his decision during the party conference after lamenting that Bloom's behaviour would dominate media coverage of the event. In a statement, Bloom said he intends to remain in the European Parliament as an independent. Out of the 13 UKIP MEPs elected in 2009, Bloom is the 5th to quit or be expelled. All of those 5 are still sitting in the Parliament, either as independents or British Conservatives. European news. Greek police raid Golden Dawn offices. Greek police raided the offices of Golden Dawn and arrested a police officer, authorities said, amidst a major probe on the links between law enforcers and far-right politicians. A 45-year-old officer who's working as the bodyguard of a Golden Dawn lawmaker was detained during the raid at party offices in central Greece, a police source said. The officer had been suspended from his duties last September over suspicions that he joined a Golden Dawn politician and other supporters in smashing up the street stalls of migrant peddlers. The links between Golden Dawn and police have come under intense scrutiny in Greece after the murder of an anti-fascist musician by an alleged member of the party. Further raids of Golden Dawn's offices are expected in coming days, the police source said. Greek police face job cuts in latest government austerity measures. Hundreds of workers held a mock funeral in Athens in protest at the disbanding of the municipal police service. Civil servants also took part, as around 12,500 are being suspended on partial pay and face losing their jobs. The government must make the public sector cuts to continue receiving international bailout funds. China to rent 5% of Ukraine. Ukraine has agreed a deal with a Chinese firm to lease 5% of its land to feed China's burgeoning and increasingly demanding population, it's been reported. It would be the biggest so-called land grab agreement where one country leases or sells land to another, in a trend that has now been compared to the 19th century scramble for Africa, but which is now spreading to the vast and fertile plains of Eastern Europe. Under the 50-year plan, China would eventually control 3 million hectares, an area equivalent to Belgium or Massachusetts, which represents 9% of Ukraine's arable land. Initially 100,000 hectares would be leased. The farmland in the eastern Dnipropetrovsk region would be cultivated principally for growing crops and raising pigs. The produce will be sold at preferential prices to Chinese state-owned conglomerates, said the Xinjiang Production and Construction Corp, XPCC, a quasi-military organisation also known as Bingtuan. XPCC said on Tuesday that it has signed a £1.7 billion agreement in June with KSG Agro, Ukraine's leading agricultural company. KSG Agro, however, denied reports that it has sold land to the Chinese, saying it had only reached agreement for the Chinese to modernise 3,000 hectares and may in the future gradually expand to cover more areas. Any sort of land grab deal can be highly sensitive politically. Madagascar was forced to scrap a plan to lease 1.2 million hectares to South Korea in 2009 after angry protests against neo-colonialism. The Philippines has also blocked a China investment deal. World at 8 states. This could be a brilliant idea to stop the dragon forcing a mass move of population, or it could be the thin end of the wedge to occupy a country by financial means. I would be very wary indeed if I lived in the Ukraine. China is a non-immigration country, so obviously doesn't want to open up the Chinese to different cultures, so would suggest that they do something about their population boom. I now hand you over to the Reverend West for his Wednesday talk, and today he talks about Michael Gove and the Creature from the Deep.
Michael Gove and the Creature from the Deep. Michael Gove. Is he a creature from the deep? When I first went to school in 1960 in Scotland, And Mrs. Reed would often say to children who were in their very first year and who had been caught doing something unbecoming, "You filthy, dirty, disgusting creature." She said it in her Scots accent. She was about 60 at the time and looked it, and the offender, often a boy, might be then called out for the strap across the hand. They were the good old days when education meant learning and strictness. I did not do too well under it until, that is, I came to the more lenient, but still rather strict and rigorous quality education of England. Michael Gove, like many of his forebears since the 1970s, has forgotten what education is all about. He keeps waving his magic wand, imagining that one fell swoop of it from his management office will put to right all the things that those of his ilk have spent millions of pounds on since the 60s in marring. In 1986, some Conservative fool got rid of the cane. Before that, it was the Labour Party who thought of ending selection in an attempt to promote social equality rather than educational quality. O-levels and CSEs were abolished in favour of the one-size-fits-all mousesuit, the GCSE. Then A-levels were dumbed down from being the gold standard of education to semester courses of AS and A2. But what is soon learnt, and often learnt not very well, is soon forgot. Today, the modern classroom is often a scene of riot. Many headmasters now hide in their bunkers and refuse to back up their staff, or to insist on discipline in the classroom or the corridor. I am surprised how many of them look, behave and sound more like Bambi rather than someone who is in control of themselves, let alone their schools. And then there is Gove. Is he from the deep? I can even now hear Mrs. Reed's accented tones and a disgusting creature heading to the front. Mr. Gove reminds me of that boy that one often used to see in the shadow of the bicycle sheds, all on his own, eating away at his sherbet and licorice, looking dishevelled and friendless. But who would want to befriend someone who ate licorice and sherbet? I know that there are some things that Mr. Gove has gotten right, but his staying in education is not one of them. For example, he did his best to distribute the King James Bible to every school in 2012 upon its 400th anniversary. Hallelujah for that. But did he imagine that his equality education system would enable pupils to prize it or even read it? If so, he is worse than he looks. I am deeply disturbed by a man who cannot get back to basics and does not know what it means to be a true blue. Getting children through their course or through their courses is now the sole responsibility of the teachers. Well, shouldn't it be? No. The teacher's responsibility is to tame and then to teach. They need the backup of corporal punishment for the wicked, the vile, and the persistently disruptive. Never mind their human rights. Once teaching has taken place, then it is the child's responsibility, not the teacher's, to learn. We did our examinations years ago and passed them. That painful experience, with the risk of failure and the prospect of success for those who worked and who had the ability, was there for all to partake of. No attempt to becloud that point will get around it, but not for Gove. He thinks that the teacher can even do the child's learning for it, and so he has introduced a new way of grading the teacher, not for his teaching, but for the child's learning. All teaching has now got to be more than satisfactory to be satisfactory. Gove has 4 grades in his Paradise Universe. Inadequate, which means what it says. Satisfactory, which means the opposite of what it says. Good, which must now mean only satisfactory. And excellent, which must now mean only good. Teachers who are satisfactory are re-inspected and are not satisfactory until they become good. And yet this man, Gov, sought to distribute the King James Bible in our schools. If pupils' use of language is as bad as his, they will be quite unable to benefit from it. The latest development from this command-style education system, run ultimately from an ex-journalist in a distant office, is to force apprentice-style children to do at least several GCSEs and to get at least 3 grade Cs. This really is the Soviet system of economics applied to a centralised command style of education. The command style of running the economy in the Soviet Union produced low growth, shoddy domestic products, food shortages and immense queues. It also begat massive environmental damage, not least at Chernobyl. I have witnessed the same for education, and I foresee more of the same. What is the solution? Get back to the 1960s, where you had textbooks, exercise books, pen and ink, the cane, and blackboard and chalk. Never mind about equality, Gov. You stupid boy, I am tempted to say. You are a fool, Gov, if you think otherwise. Get out of my classroom and wait outside of my study. I have a special present waiting for you, and it will print BNP right across your backside. Dangerous idiots within the education system have to be dealt with, that others may learn. Meanwhile, his sherbet and licorice fell out of his quivering hands and onto the floor, where everyone else could walk over it. Gov was never seen again, and what is more, was never heard of. Let us hope he learns something useful from someone who knows, and that he adopts an alternative future for himself and the rest of us. Education is not something that should be fooled or played around with. It should be reformed to something like how it used to be, when it produced excellence for those who were academically capable, and the 3 basic R's and practical vocational experience for the many who would most benefit from them.
Thank you, Reverend. I love it. I would like to remind listeners that there will be no Sunday service this week as we are all at conference. World news. AIDS and pregnant, Tunisian girl recounts her sex jihad in Syria. Raymond Ibrahim tells the world the Arabic media has been full of interviews with some of the many Tunisian girls that went to the sex jihad in Syria. The other day, Tunisian newspaper Al Sharouk, Sunrise, shed light on the horrific experiences of one of these girls. Her name is Lamia and she's 19 years old. While in Syria she had sex with jihadis fighting to overthrow the secular Bashar al-Assad regime. Among other nationalities she recalls having slept with were Pakistanis, Afghanis, Libyans, Tunisians, Iraqis, Saudis and Somalis, all in the context of the sex jihad. Such a diverse array of jihadis is a reminder of the nature of the rebellion. It's less about indigenous Syrians fighting for freedom and more about international jihadis fighting for Sharia. According to Al Sharouk reporters who went to interview Lamia at her home, the young woman began her story by saying that in 2011 she became religious after watching an Islamic programme. Among other things, she took to wearing the hijab and came to believe that going out in public was a sin. Then Lamia became convinced that a woman may participate in the jihad to eliminate the enemies of Islam by making her body recreational for the men after each and every raid, so that her body became their possession. World Today comments, "This young lady is short of a marble or two, surely. Hasn't she heard of infectious diseases and the fact that what goes up comes down 9 months later? Well, perhaps Islam will take care of her and her baby, who will be born with HIV, but I doubt it. Zimbabwe elephants poisoned by cyanide. More than 80 elephants have been killed for their ivory by poachers who use cyanide to poison a waterhole in Zimbabwe's largest game park. Tourism Minister Walter Zembe confirmed the toll on Tuesday after touring Hwange National Park. Wildlife Department officials said the chemical also kills smaller animals and predators which feed on them. 9 poachers were arrested after rangers tracked them to a cache of ivory hidden in the park. There's been a rise in the killing of elephants and rhinos in parts of Africa in recent years, mostly to feed demand for horns and tusks in Asia. World at 8 states. Yet another Chinese and Oriental run business, and no punishment is too great for this very nasty crime. As the Mongolian races are not known for large penises, perhaps Viagra is better than killing endangered species so cruelly, and perhaps the exporters and poachers could enjoy a cocktail of cyanide just to test it. Pakistan earthquake creates new island in Arabian Sea. Earthquakes are more commonly associated with death and destruction, and the 7.8 magnitude quake in Pakistan was no different. It killed at least 250 people and flattened houses in the country's remote southwest. But it was so powerful it also created something, a small island around 600 metres off Pakistan's Gwadar coastline in the Arabian Sea. People gathered on the beach to catch a glimpse of the new island, reportedly 200 metres long and 100 metres wide. Dr Brian Bapty from the British Geological Survey said the island had appeared off the coast of Pakistan after the earthquake is a mud volcano, formed as gas and water forced its way through the surface. World at 8 states. Unfortunately not large enough to accommodate our illegal Pakistani migrants. What a disappointment. Thought for the day. Will it be our mouths next? Now, I made a promise to my better half not to slag off the Muslims all the time, but I'm afraid I'm about to break it. There are many reasons for this, and I'm going to tell you mine. My main reason is fear, honest and simple. I know all that ridiculous diversity fuel rubbish about fearing what you don't know, but the reverse and more usual answer to this is I fear what I do know. What I do know is from my travels and living abroad in the days before multiculturalism is that even in the 60s Islam was regarded as a necessary evil for the masses in large countries, usually in the third world. In fact, well out of our sight in the West. I know it was Islam that effed up partition in India and that a vast majority of Islam sided with Hitler and co, which I always found odd as they're hardly of Aryan stock but more of the Semite stock I would have thought. An Indian guy I met in the late 70s with my second husband in Hong Kong said that whenever you get Muslims into a new country, that country will undergo changes and troubles because that is how they operate, slowly and by force of numbers, and he was absolutely right. Since then we've had the UN taking up the cudgels of the poor persecuted Muslims, even in countries formerly not considered their own by culture or history, merely by living there a few generations, culminating in the greatest surges of Muslim migration into Europe that has been seen since the Middle Ages. Make no mistake, you don't have to be a raving fascist or a nationalist knuckle-dragger, as we're called, to see what's happening on a large scale to the UK as well. There is in progress a national programme of genocide, and this involves importing large numbers of mainly Islamic peoples into our culture, which has no ties with Islam at all, even if you do count the reliability we have of oil in the West. It is a religion which has no bearing at all on Christianity, and I don't care what certain sects say about finding Christ's body in northern India, or that Abraham is the root of Islamism. Abraham is the root of the Jewish faith, and only taken by his ethnicity and placement in the Middle East into Islam. Islam is a man-made religion and not the first or last to worship the one God, Yahweh, Allah, Zeus or whatever you call him or don't. Islam has no place in Jerusalem in my opinion. Muhammad was never there and the Romans, Jews and later Christians were. The Crusades were undertaken because of the greed and warlike nature of Islam and the warlords, of which Muhammad was one, and when they got the worst of it, it became a holy war or jihad. Nothing has changed much there, and indeed it is a creed which hasn't changed since the year 800 AD, which means Anno Domini, since Jesus Christ. My point being, our European governments have opened the doors to Islam, but have they done so with a plan in mind, or have they been overtaken by the sheer numbers let in to settle, breed, convert and radicalise? Will Europe become the new holy war as seems to have occurred in Kenya? Even in Kenya, the newscasters are concentrating on the large number of unfortunate Hindu Indians caught in the murderous rampage, but they are at least reporting on the non-Muslims who obviously don't know the Prophet's mother's name. By the way, what is it? It's been glaringly obvious even to all the Muslim lovers in the UK that these terrorists were killing non-Muslims and let the Muslims out of the mall. Along with many unreported killings in the UK and the undercovered Lee Rigby death, we are in line for a bigger show of strength and religious virtuosity from Islam in the next few years. The establishment are hoping to avoid this by buying off the Muslim communities with large financial benefits, laws which uphold their religion and way of life, houses accommodated to do the same, an education system gradually going that way and placing them in positions of power in what is in effect a strange country to them. Many, if not most of these people fly round the world from Muslim enclave to enclave, overseeing their businesses and flash houses and a plethora of relations with whom to marry off and breed yet more. This is clearly not good enough, and more will be demanded, like a jizya, total submission or else. Don't think it cannot happen here, it can and it will. That is why I'm frightened, not because I know it will happen, but because knowing our media and the world press, it will never be as publicised as the African one, which clearly involved more British Indians than thought initially. Also in Syria at the moment is the total extermination of Christians by rebels, and we don't hear anything of that outside the nationalist news, do we? Another factor has been reported on the Kenyan Mall massacre. They now say that the Islamic terrorists probably rented a shop within the mall over a year ago and opened a clothes shop. This would have allowed them to bring in all the arms they needed for the future attack. So no one need ever say to me that these attacks are not planned and well thought out many years and months before they happen, and all well below Western or European radar. Because we don't want to believe that a people we apparently welcome and encourage into a country could turn against us. It's an admission of defeat to the multicultural establishment, and one that cannot be put down to racist bastards like the average nationalist. The West is still conducting a love affair like Diana with Islam and hasn't woken up to the fact it is all useless and in fact debasing. Muslims do not respect weakness or kindness or manners. We still do in the UK and Europe, and this will be our undoing. We are too nice to survive what will come. Or are we? And finally, a piglet's tumble off slaughter truck saves his bacon. Brossard, Quebec, September 24th, UPI. A piglet's accidental tumble off the back of a slaughterhouse truck truly saved his Canadian bacon, an animal shelter said. Quebec provincial police were patrolling Highway 30 near Brossard Wednesday when they were called by motorists who saw the piglet walking down the side of the road. Other witnesses said they were driving behind a truck carrying a load of piglets headed to a local farm when they would be prepared for slaughter when they saw the little oinker wiggle his way through a gap in the back of the truck and tumble off, the Canadian Broadcasting Corps said. The officers called animal control workers who came and scooped up the piglet. After some online research, the piglet was taken to Wishingwell Animal Shelter north of Toronto, where he was evaluated and treated for a few minor scrapes and bruises from the ordeal. The shelter's owner, Brenda Brofman, said that the piglet, since named Yoda, is all manner of cute and cuddly and lucky. He just loves to crawl into people's laps and be held. He's a little angel, she said. Wishingwell adopts animals for life, so Bronfman said little Yoda, now sporting a sweater for warmth, will live out his days on the shelter's farm. This presenter says they need to get him a little companion, as piggies are social animals. One thing about bacon is that it won't be halal, will it? Frankly, I don't think they should kill baby animals for food, poor little things. Let them have a good life before the end, I say. Yoda sounds a little corker of a porker, doesn't he? You've been listening to The World at 8, and I'm Lynn Mozar, and I wish you all a very good night.